Hey guys, and welcome to my complete dungeoneering guide, including the basics and more intermediate / advanced tricks. This guide will consist of everything you've ever wanted to know about the dungeoneering skill, and it will also include every single boss and puzzle. So when you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now, while dungeoneering may not have any requirements and can be done on a completely fresh account, I do want to go over useful things that are especially important if you're going to be training dungeoneering to 99 and beyond for completionist cape. The first two abilities are simply important if you want to get into speed dungeoneering, as the faster your floors are, the more experience you'll be getting. These are simply important for getting faster dungeon clears. Other than that, they aren't essential, but they do help. Having the full Trailblazer outfit unlocked is also definitely something I recommend if you're going to be doing a lot of dungeoneering, simply because of the buffs, which are absolutely insane, and you don't even need to wear the outfit. You can simply leave it in your bank. Now, there's 4 versions which already have decent buffs, but if you combine these versions you get the warp version, which is even better. Now, fragments for this outfit, if you haven't obtained the pieces through Treasure Hunter, can be obtained after level 70 dungeoneering by training the skill or by doing elite dungeons, and after level 20 invention and 80 dungeoneering you can start crafting the pieces at an inventor's workbench. There's a catch though, you do need to buy a blueprint costing 200,000 dungeoneering tokens from the elite dungeon reward shop from the NPC called Brill before you can start crafting these fragments, but don't worry, you can simply do ED1 token farming to get those tokens rather quickly. Next up is the Daemonheim aura, which once claimed after completing the elite, medium, hard or elite tasks, you will have permanently inside dungeoneering. You do not need to activate this aura, it's a permanent aura, which is really nice. Now, I would say for group dungeoneering, if you want fast clears, Daemonheim Aura 2 is essential, simply because you won't need to bind runes, as you'll have cosmic and lore runes for your Gatestone teleports and curations when you get into every single dungeon. Now, the 4th version of the aura is even more important, especially if you are doing larges either solo or in groups, because there will be situations where you will have dropped your group and regular Gatestone, and there's a room where you have access to various keys, but you don't yet have those keys. So you want to drop a Gatestone so you can teleport back to this area, but you can't because you don't have another Gatestone. I've had this happen a few times already myself when I had Aura 2, so yeah. Aura 4 is important if you're going to go for 120. If you're going for 99, maybe not so much, but for 120 you definitely want to get Aura 4, so do the elite achievements. Now, if I could give everyone watching this video a tip, if you want to save some hours of your life, please do the Portent of Passage achievement called Port Enter, which is part of the medium Daemonheim achievements, before you have a maxed account and the Trailblazer outfit unlocked, because otherwise it's going to take you hours, you have to drain your stats, and then it's annoying. You're going to have to do a lot of floors to get this achievement done. Do it before you get the outfit, because it boosts your stats, and it's annoying. Next up, we have lock melters, which can be used once per dungeon, and that includes group dungeons. You can only use 1 per party, and these can be used to melt doors that you don't have access to because they have a high skill requirement, or to melt a puzzle door, which is ideally what you want to use it for, because some puzzles take very long, and with this item you can skip another puzzle, including the one you are able to skip using the full warped outfit. Garaggio cards are also very useful, as they can give you various buffs, but the important ones are the double tokens, 50% more XP and 100% more XP cards. You can buy these from the elite dungeon reward shop, either 5,000 for solo cards that only work for you inside the dungeon, or 15,000 for group cards, which is useful if you want all of your friends to have the same bonuses. Now, one thing that's really crazy is that the Thieving Locust gives you double the experience, but on double experience weekend that means you can get 4 times the base experience. That is insane XP on double experience weekend. Next up, the Perfect Juju Dungeoneering Potion, and once sipped, this potion effect will last for 4 hours. With this potion active, you will deal 5% more damage, have a 25% increased chance of obtaining journal pages, and you have a +2 hidden level boost to all skills for opening skill doors. If you are doing the achievements, make sure that this thing isn't active, because it will be annoying for that Portent of Passage achievement. Now, your Clan Citadel buff can be a nice bonus in terms of experience, and I do have a video covering this as well, as it works for all skills in Runescape. Now, the Dungeoneering Party Simulator is another invention item you can create, which can be used to get the experience as if you're doing 5-man dungeons, but instead you're doing it with 4-man dungeons. This is useful if you can't find a full group. Next up we have the Dungeoneering skill cape, which can be worn inside Dungeoneering and give you the bonuses. It's simply an extra. And finally, overloads are useful for bosses that drain your stats or other creatures that drain your stats, and of course doors that require a higher combat level to open. So if you're going to be doing really fast dungeons for advanced Dungeoneering, you will want to have all of these items you can see on screen, and at the bare minimum the Daemonheim Aura 2 unlocked. I'm just saying this right now in case you're watching this video and you're already level 99 Dungeoneering and you're interested in getting 120. All of these things on this list are important to get faster dungeon clears. I'll be getting into the good binds later. First up, the basics. First of all, how to get there. How to get started. Teleport to the Lumber's Lodestone and go into the swamp as seen. You then want to take the ship as seen on the video to Daemonheim. You will then want to follow the video as seen until you get to the area where you start Dungeoneering. At this place you want to talk to an NPC called the Dungeoneering Tutor. Once you've talked to him, he will give you your Ring of Kingship, an item you're going to be using to start Dungeoneering. This item is always required to be in your inventory and is the only item you can take into Dungeoneering as of right now. To get started, open the ring and choose Form Party. You will now see that you're inside a party, and it will also show you your floor and complexity. It will also show your current progress and previous progress in terms of prestige and how many floors you've done before you've reset. I'll get into this in a little bit. Now, if you're starting out Dungeoneering, your complexity will always be 1, as you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 to unlock Dungeoneering completely. After you've unlocked 6, you always want to be training Dungeoneering on complexity 6. It will simply add more skilling locations, puzzles, and various doors, and there's no reason to really do it on a lower complexity unless you're completing achievements, because you will miss out on experience. Now there's this thing called open and closed floors. You can check which floors you have open by clicking on change the floor and then looking at the image. Everything that is ticked off is a closed floor, meaning if you do that floor again without resetting, you're going to get much less experience from doing that floor. So whenever you've done a random set of floors, you want to go ahead and check off all these floors you have available to you within your Dungeoneering level before choosing the reset option on your Ring of Kingship. This is with reason, because with prestige you get more experience at the end of every single dungeon. Now the great thing is you can do a certain type of dungeon, for example Furnished, with a group of friends that might have different floors open, but when they complete that floor with you, you'll still tick off those floors within that category of floor, even though it's not the same floor. This is extremely beneficial if you and your friends have a few random floors open and you just rush one type of category of floor, for example again Furnished, and you clear them all for every single person in the party. The reason prestige is important is simply because it's a prevention system that stops you from rerunning the same floor over and over again by giving you minus 50% XP. This is why prestige once you've done all of the floors that are open. Once you're ready, click on the Dungeoneering entrance to start a dungeon. Here you can select either small, medium, or large. If you're rushing floors 1 to 30, you want to do either smalls or mediums. Later you'd want to do larges. I'll explain more about this after we get to the leveling section. As you can see, we spawn inside a dungeon. In every dungeon you can find food and various low-level combat items on the table. You can pick these up and use them. You can also bind combat items by right-clicking them and choosing bind. They will now disappear from your inventory, but don't worry, as the smuggle NPC will hold them for you. Binding items means you can put them in a sort of binding setup, which is like a preset, except you only get it when you go inside a new dungeon. This means you can use high-level combat gear you find or create throughout a dungeon in other dungeons. Meaning you could potentially create all kinds of gear in one dungeon, then put it in your bind setup and use it to quickly go through other dungeons. You can remove items from your bind setup by dragging them to the little trash can. Now you get more bind slots per loadout the higher your Dungeoneering level is, and something a lot of people don't know is that dual wield weapons can count as one single slot, given that you put the main hand weapon in first, as seen on the video. Now you may notice that there are various skilling stations around the starting area, like an altar, rift, workbench, smithing area, and so on. However, for the majority of the Dungeoneering you'll be doing, you won't look at these items unless you're crafting gear or doing achievements. But this portal for the group Gatestone is very important if you don't yet have the lore runes in your bind setup, as it can teleport you straight to the group Gatestone, which the party leader can drop and someone else could pick up and drop again. This is useful for teleporting around the dungeon when you have certain puzzles that require a group, like emotes, or when everyone wants to go to the boss room to kill the boss, or when ending the dungeon at the end of the dungeon. There are more Gatestones that you can create and teleport to yourself, but this is something I'll cover in the intermediate/advanced section. If you have the magic level requirement, you can start using Gatestones, and it's really simply a shortcut you place at a section in the dungeon you cannot yet access or open up, like a door that requires a key that you'll teleport to later in the dungeon to then open up. It will save you a lot of time and give you more experience per hour. Now in Dungeoneering we have three main types of door you want to know about. You have the skill door, which is a door you open up having a various skill requirement, for example level 90 magic, 90 divination, 90 strength. There are various skilling doors and you simply open these up by having the skill requirements, and if you don't, you can use a portent of passage which you can create with divination inside the dungeon. This is also a medium achievement. We then have key doors, which are simply doors you open up by having the correct key which you find throughout the dungeon. These keys change in shape and in color, so you need to make sure you have the right color and right key, and you can see which keys you currently have by checking the little interface at the top of your screen. And the final main door you have is a guardian door, which is simply opened by killing all the monsters inside the room. If there's a necromancer that spawns skeletons, you'd want to kill the necromancer first, obviously. Now at the end of every single dungeon you have a boss fight, and there's also a chance you find certain puzzle rooms throughout the dungeon, but because there are so many different puzzles and bosses, I've created a full separate section covering all of these later on in the video. Please check the description below for the timestamps. And finally, at the end of every single dungeon, you have the option to either leave or keep going to the next floor. This section also shows you how much experience and tokens you have received from completing the dungeon. Before I get into the Dungeoneering section that is actually important and will teach you how to do Dungeoneering properly, I want to give you guys a suggested bind setup. At level 90 Dungeoneering, you want at least tier 90 hybrid weapons, which you can craft inside the dungeon. If you get a drop from a night spider, you also want to have a shadow silk hood inside your bind setup. At level 120 Dungeoneering, you can bind more items, and you want to farm some of the bosses to get the more important tier 99 weapons. And if possible, get yourself a tier 99 Sagittarian ranged body instead of that shadow silk hood. One thing I'd also quickly like to cover is basic shortcuts that people use inside Dungeoneering, like GTE, which is go to the end to finish off the dungeon, or GT, Group Gatestone Teleport, and a bunch of other shortcuts for keys and stuff, which will be mentioned in my section where I explain intermediate and advanced Dungeoneering, because you can use this to memorize what keys are still left at a certain gatestone you've put down and created, so that you can teleport back once you pick up those keys somewhere else in the dungeon. Also in World 77, which is one of the main Dungeoneering worlds, if people type floor type plus 1, 2, 3, and 4, it means they're looking for players to fill up their party. For example, if they say OCC plus 2, it means occult floors plus 2 people. This is something I wanted to mention in the video so you are at least aware of what it is, and there will be a wiki link in the description below covering all of these. Again, here are the recommendations I have if you want to get fast floors and if you're going to be doing Dungeoneering to 120. One thing I highly suggest doing is setting up your Dungeoneering map next to your mini-map. You do this by going to your edit layout settings, selecting Dungeoneering map, and then dragging it either under or left of your mini-map. You do this because you're going to keep an eye on this map throughout the dungeon, and if you have to look over to the other side of your screen, that's just not going to work very well. Another tip I can give you is to turn on the midday skybox filter or alternatively shattered worlds so that you can see the dungeon a lot better. This is especially useful in the darker dungeons like Warped and Occult. I also highly recommend talking to the smuggler and changing your starting items from rusty coins to feathers, rune essence, and anti-poison, as you'll need the feathers for a puzzle and the anti-poison can come in handy when you get poisoned. And finally, customizing your Ring of Kingship to the style you'll be using the most and upgrading that style using your Dungeoneering tokens. This can give you benefits throughout the dungeon. Now if you're wondering, range is the best to go with using Sniper and Desperado, since you can activate 2 using the aura. The reason you'd want this setup is because most bosses are done with ranged inside Daemonheim. The second to last tip I have to prepare is to keybind your spells related to the Gatestones, including dropping the Gatestones on your action bar, and to keybind your hybrid or tri-bit switches. Keybinds are essential to speedy dungeons as you're going to waste many seconds clicking the spells manually. While we're at it, I'm going to explain why Gatestones are so important. Let's say you find a room with multiple key rooms you cannot yet unlock either solo or in a group. This is when you'd want to Gatestone this area. If you have Aura 4, you have access to 2 extra Gatestones, personal Gatestones, which is why I recommend unlocking it. Now in these clips I dungeoneered without a second Gatestone, and I've had plenty of situations where I wanted to gate another door with keys I didn't have yet. But I couldn't because I would otherwise destroy my first Gatestone, because when you create another one you destroy your previously placed Gatestone. Another tip I can give you is to type in the chat what doors are at your Gatestones, especially in solos, to remind yourself. For example, if you have a green triangle door at your first Gatestone, you would type GT1 in your chat. Or have godlike memory, it's up to you I guess. Having a second Gatestone is also incredibly useful if you are to buy, which means picking up the group Gatestone from your party host. The final thing I'd like to cover before I get into some speedy dungeoneering footage is the critical path. If I don't explain it now, you'll scratch your head during the speed dungeoneering footage. The critical path are the doors and paths that are critical to finishing the dungeon, meaning you can theoretically finish the dungeon without opening any so-called bonus doors. But to get more experience you would want to get a full dungeon clear, unless that means completing puzzles that require too much time, and there are situations where you would simply want to end the dungeon and just ignore that bonus puzzle door. The critical path can be indicated by using guide mode if you want to get a better understanding of what doors and paths are critical and which ones aren't, as the critical path glows gold or has a little glow to it. That being said, never use guide mode for more than one floor, as it can give you a negative XP modifier that can go to minus 12% experience. As you gain experience, you will no longer need to use guide mode, as you can identify bonus and critical rooms or doors in multiple ways. One is door experience. Now because there are too many variables and different party sizes with different account builds, I will skip this mostly, but as an easy rule of thumb, if you're dungeoning with at least one fully maxed player, any room that gives you less than 300 XP is a guaranteed bonus. The second is by seeing high level materials and spawns in the room, like grave creeper trees and Promethean ore, etc. Although there are occasions where bonus rooms have these too, so it isn't 100% accurate. The third way to identify a critical door is by examining the door to see its level requirement. Assuming the max level of the skill is 99, and there's people in the party that have level 99 in this skill, critical doors will have a level requirement of levels 90 to 99, as it's the max level minus 9 levels. Another way of predicting the critical path is by keeping an eye on the dungeon map. Especially if you are the dungeon host, you need to keep the other players in the dungeon busy while you follow the longest or possibly the critical path. After some time and practice, you should be able to identify the critical path by prediction. Now for the majority of the video I have been dungeoneering with Xanthus, who has helped me with a lot of things in this video, but I've also received help and tips from the DG service French chat, which also have a Discord, and it's pretty obvious to what they do, it's in their name, but that's not the reason they wanted to help me. They wanted to help me because they want to see more people know what they are doing in dungeoneering. And this is also a big reason I'm making this guide. I'd like to see the skill become a little more active and see people understand how quick this skill actually is if you take some time to learn and do it in groups. I cannot stress this enough, doing dungeoneering in groups makes it so much better. First of all, it's a lot more fun than just doing it by yourself all alone. Especially if you do it in voice chat, it is a very fun skill and there's definitely depth to it. However, if you don't care about fun and you simply want experience, you should still do it in groups. 5-man group lodges are so much better experience than doing it in a small group or doing it alone. Now the reason I asked them to record their perspective is simply because you can see what they're thinking and what they're doing. For example, right here, examining if the door is a critical door or a bonus door. This footage is going to show you pretty much everything I've mentioned in practice or in action. Something this dungeon didn't have too much of was Gatestone teleporting and buying and selling the group Gatestone. It did happen in other dungeons, but it wasn't as common in this one because it was pretty linear. Now you'll also see a variety of puzzles, and these are either skipped or done depending on how long they are. Now the reason you'd want to skip certain puzzles is simply to save time. Time is everything in experience per hour in dungeoneering. simply because more floors cleared per hour means more experience per hour, given that all of your floors are open and you've just prestiged. Now it is worth mentioning that at the higher levels beyond level 99 you might even want to buy skips of your tokens from the reward shop for the lower tier floors, because they are simply less experienced than higher tier floors like Warped and Occult. But regardless, faster dungeons means more experience per hour, which is why group dungeoneering is what you want to be doing, either if you're doing it 1 to 99 or 99 to 120. Now, I did get some questions, what about solo dungeoneering? Well, solo dungeoneering is very similar in the fact that you still want to use your Gatestones and you still want to skip certain puzzles. You know what, I'll put a list on screen of puzzles you pretty much always want to skip, simply because they can cost a lot of time, and if you mess it up, it's going to cost you even more time. For example, this puzzle, the barrels, just skip it. Really, it's going to be such a waste of your time. It's time-gated content, it's boring, no one likes it, and it's going to cost you experience per hour by actually doing it. Now, there's going to be a nice Gatestone example coming up in just a second, where a teammate picks up the silver crescent key, as you can see here, with area loot even, and then the other person in my team quickly goes to that door, teleports to his Gatestone because he gated it, opens it up, and continues throughout that door. This is why Gatestones are important. Again, it will become common sense once you start dungeoneering yourself after watching this guide, or if you've dungeoned already. Putting down Gatestones at doors you cannot open yet is the way to go. It's going to save you so much time, and right here, what I'm doing here is walking. I'm actually wasting time, so what I do is I teleport to the group Gatestone, and I see if I can do something here, and I can. As you can see, a blade dive towards the door here, and I try and do something useful, because walking is bad. Also, in this particular example, I show you a little sweaty trick that you can surge to open the door after unlocking it, because you unlock the door one tile away from the door. So after you've unlocked the door, you can surge using your keybind and then open the door instantly. There's a lot of things you need to know to become a good dungeoneerer, if that's a word. But as long as you know where to place your Gatestones and you have a decent understanding of the bosses, puzzles, and how the dungeon layout is with the critical path, you're going to be so much faster and better than you were before. And even if you can't do solo large dungeons in under 10 minutes, 20 minutes for solo large is, in my opinion, a little slow after you've watched this video. But if you get 150k for that floor, that still means 450k dungeoneering experience per hour. But if you add cards on that and double experience, it's going to be so much more. You can get 750k experience per floor on double experience weekend and using cards. That's a lot of experience for 20 minutes of work, or if you're doing it in a group, for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, in this case 4 minutes and 6 or 7 seconds. So dungeoneering is a really fast skill if you get into it with a good group. Now, the floor order doesn't necessarily matter, but like I said, if you're at a higher level, you might want to skip the lower floors instead of rushing them using your tokens. And don't forget to ever prestige after clearing all your floors, as you will be getting more experience if you prestige properly and do your floors after that. This is the bosses section of the Dungeoneering guide. As a high level player, the majority of these bosses can simply be DPS'd through, but some of them do definitely have some mechanics. And some can be quite annoying if you don't know how to counter these mechanics. I'll be starting with the frozen bosses and ending with warped bosses. The first boss, being the gluttonous behemoth, only has one mechanic. This boss can eat from the carcass, so all you have to do to kill it, in case you can't DPS hard enough, is stand in between the carcass and the boss to prevent it from healing. The next boss, called Astia Frostweb, has a few mechanics. She can stun you, which is why ranged or magic weapons are beneficial here, and she can spawn spiders. She can also protect against a certain combat style, preventing you from doing any damage with that combat style, meaning you'll need at least 2 types of weapons to finish her off. The next boss is Icy Bones, and he can hit you with his spikes, but as long as you're melee distance, you should be fine. This is more of a DPS boss than anything else, and it won't give you much problems. The next boss, called Luminescent Ice Fiend, might give you more problems, as it has an attack that spawns a lot of these spikes that fall down. Now, these can be avoided by simply running around, but you can also stand still and take the hits from them if you're a high level player only, because these spikes will never kill you. They will leave you on very low HP. The only reason you would ever want to stand still here is if you're a high level player with Soul Split, because if you're a low level player, even if the spikes won't kill you, you'll be at such low HP at some point that the boss will end up killing you and you'll lose more experience. If you're a high level player though, you can use this method and it's a lot more chill. The next boss is the Flame Freezer, and this boss must be killed using a ranged or magic weapon if you want to kill it without sliding around the room. If you have the outfit you can kill it with melee, but if you don't have the full outfit, what happens is as soon as you step on the snow you'll be skirting around the room, which is why I recommend killing this boss with either a ranged or magic weapon so you don't have to do that. Another cool tip for this boss is if you're doing it and it's your first time killing it, just skirt to one of the corners and stand there using a ranged or magic weapon. The final boss of the Frozen Floors is the Tokash the Blood Chiller Demon boss, and this boss can stun you when he says Deep Freeze. You can simply counter this by using the Freedom ability, and other than that he's just a big DPS dummy and it won't be too hard for you. If you're using melee against this boss, pray magic. If you're using ranged, pray melee. The Skeletal Horde is an annoying time-gated boss found in abandoned 1 and 2 floors. This boss is time-gated, but it is fairly easy. If you have any struggles doing this boss, you can always run to the NPC called the Divine Skin Weaver, which will heal you up. All you have to do during this boss fight is close all 5 tunnels. You can close one tunnel every time the NPC, the Skin Weaver, says something along the lines like quickly close the tunnels, close it off because you have a chance, blah 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 blah, and it's a green message in your chat box. If you try to close a tunnel before that, you'll take a massive typeless damage hit, so don't do that. Do it every time you get the little green text in your chat box. After you've closed all 5 tunnels, finish off the final skeletons and then left click on the Divine Skin Weaver, talk to her, and then you can end the dungeon. The next boss is the Hobgoblin Geomancer, and all he really does is teleport around the arena, and that's about it. He's a DPS dummy. Very simple to kill. The next boss, called the Bulwark Beast, must be killed with magic, and if you don't have magic in your setup, this will be very annoying. You can kill him with melee, but you first need to destroy his armor, and it takes super duper long. So just grab a magic weapon and attack him, because otherwise it's going to take ages to kill this boss. That's all you need to know, really. The Unholy Curse Bearer is another DPS dummy boss, but he will drain your stats, so the faster you kill him, the better. The next boss, being the Shadow Forger, also has a stat draining mechanic, but he will drain 33% of your levels immediately with his special attack, and that's huge, and it will cause you to kill the boss slower. The Green Acid also drains your defense, and with this boss you do not want to hide behind any pillars because he will use a attack that deals typeless damage. Bulwark the Pummeler has one mechanic that's really important, and that's the acid. The green stuff on the floor, just don't stand in it. However, if you lure the boss to stand in it, it will lower his defense, allowing you to hit with greater accuracy. Next up we have Ramonaut, which is another DPS dummy, except for the fact that he can charge at you. If he yells charge, move out of the way, because otherwise he will hit you with massive hits. Other than that, he has some specials, but he's really just a DPS dummy. So yeah, just keep an eye on what he says, or alternatively just run around the room while hitting him with ranged or magic. That might make him a little easier for you. Next up is Stomp, and he's arguably one of the worst bosses in Dungeoneering because he's such a time-gated boss. You'll have to grab these crystals that are around the arena, and you have to put them on each side of the boss. You have to do this in a short period of time. If you're not fast enough, you'll have to do it again. If you're the party leader, what you can do is put one of your Gatestones on the other side and teleport to it for the second crystal thing. If you have to, you'll have to mine through the rocks to get to some of the crystals in some phases. You have to do it 3 times with 3 different colors. And really, it's just, yeah, time-gated content, not very fun, annoying boss, and you just hope you don't get this one. Harlak the Wrist Splitter is another boss that is a DPS dummy for a high level player. If you're a little low level, you'll be a little slower, and you'll have to deal with his portal attack, but simply avoiding any portal he spawns will save you from those portals. It's really, really easy. And he can also disable your prey with an attack, but it's not the biggest of deals. Again, just DPS hard and you should be fine. The next boss is the Lexius Runewright, and ideally you want to use ranged or magic here because he will reflect 1/3 of the damage back onto you if you're using melee, as you can see in the clip on screen. And he has this sort of book attack which will do quite some damage. So yeah, this boss can hit hard. Be sure to have some food if you're a low level player, but again, high level players just can bash through this boss like it's nothing. The next boss is called Saggy Tear, and this boss is ideally done with magic. I was doing it again with melee in this video just to showcase what can go wrong. Basically, what this boss does is he teleports around and he drops this sort of arrow rain, and if you're using melee and you stand in a position where it falls, which is why it's a lot easier to kill him with ranged or magic, as you don't really have to worry about getting hit by the arrow rain because you can move around constantly and still hit him. So yeah. Be sure to bring a ranged or magic weapon for this boss, and another cool fact is that this boss does drop the Sagittarian longbow, the tier 99 bow. The next boss has a almost instant kill mechanic, which I'll cover in just a second, but before you can even deal damage to this boss you need to light at least one pillar. Ideally you'd want to light 3 of the pillars in the corners of the room so that you can kill this boss quickly. The best combat style for this boss is ranged, as it's primarily a magic boss, so if you don't have soul split you also want to pray magic against this boss. Now in the second phase it has an almost instant kill mechanic, which you can see by the big shield he's charging up. If you're anywhere near it, so melee distance, you will take a hit and you will most likely die. So yeah, just run around, avoid it. This is why I recommend range for this boss. Next up on occult floors we have the skeletal trio, and this is simply 3 bosses with 3 combat styles, and you just want to DPS them down, and ideally you'd want to have 2 different weapons in your inventory before even doing occult floors, because you will have to switch your weapons here, otherwise you won't be able to deal damage against the bosses that are protecting against one combat style. The next boss is the Rune-bound Behemoth, and all you need to know is that you need to deal damage against this boss as usual as quickly as you can, and you need to deactivate a certain crystal you want to use. Because it protects against 3 combat styles, you can deactivate crystals, for example ranged if you want to do ranged damage, and then you can do damage for 10 seconds. It is highly advised if you're a low level player to use 2 different combat styles, because otherwise you won't be able to get him down in 10 seconds, and the crystal has a 30-second cooldown, so you need to deactivate another crystal instead, because otherwise the boss fight is just going to take ages. And another 2 tips: avoid the yellow orb special attack if he does end up using it against you by running away, you can see it coming, and do not walk under this boss or you will die. The Grave Creeper is also fairly simple, but you can mess it up quite quickly. All you have to do is avoid the purple liquid on the floor, otherwise you will take damage. The second mechanic, and the easiest to mess up mechanic, is the plinths, aka tombs. Now these start glowing purple, and all you have to do is click one of them and stand near them. After that you can attack the boss again. Be sure to not move away too far from it once you've clicked one, because otherwise you might take the hit from one of the nearby tombs, or plinths. So yeah, that's all you really do. Click on them when they glow and then attack the Grave Creeper. Next up we have the Necrolord, and you simply can't kill him with melee, only with magic and ranged. He can spawn skeleton minions, but you know, he's just a DPS dummy really, and I don't think you will have any problems with this boss. Next up we have the Flesh Spoiler, and once it dies in the first phase, it will simply spawn minions, protect from melee, and you're good to go. Again, another big DPS dummy boy. Not too hard whatsoever. Next up we have Yaglagor the Thunderous, and before you can actually even attack him, you have to kill the minions, the little mages, around him, and then you can attack him. Now this boss, again, is a DPS dummy, but he can drag you into him, just like Nex does, and he has an instant kill attack, which you can avoid by standing behind the pillar. When he shouts true power, just run behind one of the pillars and stay there, otherwise you will die. Guaranteed. Blink is the first warp boss you might encounter, and he's definitely the hardest dungeoneering boss out there, if you don't know what you're doing. The way to deal with this boss without taking any damage or sometimes a few hits is simply by using the northeast corner as seen on the little mini-map on the screen. All you need to do to stop Blink and to kill him quickly is by raising a pillar at the right time. Given that you're standing in the northeastern corner, like I said, you'll only have to use these 3 pillars. And you can just chill there while looking at your minimap until he comes in your direction. As you can see, we're just vibing in this little spot on the minimap until we can see him coming. There's absolutely no reason to try and stop him from here, even though you could potentially blade a dive and stop him in time, but there's more risk to it by doing it that way. This way is definitely the safest way of doing it solo. As you can see, I see him coming on the minimap, so I raise the pillar quickly. This stops him in his path and I can attack him. Once he teleports away, go back to your starting position. Now if he does say his special, where he says here it comes, quickly raise another pillar and hide behind it, otherwise you'll take a big hit. If you're full HP you can simply tank the hit. So yeah, this is how you counter Blink, just don't blink, and remember you can only raise 1 pillar at a time. So in groups, keep that in mind. The next boss is a sort of DPS dummy, and at this point you'll probably be a high level player, so your damage should be fairly good. Now I'm about to take a massive hit on purpose. As you can see, he put his arms into the ground, there's these tentacles that are coming towards me, and once they hit me, boom, tank a hit, probably would have been an instant kill. The way you avoid this is by simply moving to the other side of the rune, or just moving away from those tentacles, and that's the biggest problem with this boss, avoided. That's how easy he is. A lot easier than Blink in my opinion. The next boss, being the Dreadnought, is a big old DPS dummy and 100% the easiest boss you will ever encounter on warped floors. He does have these orange blobs he spawns, just avoid them again, they're fairly obvious, and that's all you really need to know about this boss. The next boss is another DPS dummy, but this DPS dummy hits a little hard and he can drain your stats and prayer. If you don't have Soul Split, you'd probably want to protect from magic, and as you can see, he just used one of his special attacks. He can hit you hard, but assuming you have decent Dungeoneering weapons at this point, this is just a DPS dummy, even if you don't have Soul Split. The World Gorger boss is a weird one in the fact that you have to kill the eyes in the room that you don't want to use against the boss. For example, if you want to kill the boss with range, you would want to kill the magic and melee eyes. This will allow you to do the most amount of damage. If you want to do the boss with magic, you'd kill the ranged and melee eyes. Really weird, but that's how it works. Also, the eyes do respawn, so if you're too slow you will have to do this multiple times. If you kill all 3 eyes, the boss will be immune to all combat styles again. The final warped boss is Calgar the Warmonger, and he has a lot of time-gated phases where you can't really attack him. He also flies to the other side of the room every now and then, and you can go there by using the sphere by standing on it. This will deal damage to you though, so keep that in mind. You can also alternatively put a Gatestone on the other side and teleport there when you need to go to the other side, which is faster and it will not cost you any of your life points. He also has this thing called annoyance meter, so just don't use protection prayers as you might get a high hit. Other than that, again, just DPS and time-gated boss, not too hard if you have the good binds and the Dungeoneering level. I will now be getting into the puzzles. I will be categorizing them by easy, intermediate and hard depending on how long they take and how hard they are to understand. The majority of the easy puzzles are puzzles that require you to deal damage and are related to combat, which is why they're super easy to understand and fast to complete. Now, the Ice Pads puzzle is probably the first puzzle you'll ever encounter, and it's really simple. All you'll have to do if you don't own any of the Dungeoneering outfits is to slide around the room and go on all of the pads as you can see in the video. After you've done that, the door will unlock. Now, in my own particular clip, I'm not sliding around the room simply because I own the outfit. With the outfit, you will no longer slide on ice, including the ones inside Sagaz and the Plane Freezer boss room. And with the outfit you can simply unlock the door without even stepping on the pads, which is nice as well. Next up we have the Ghost's Guardian Room puzzle, and this one is basically killing one of the ghosts that you can attack and damage, just test them out. Once it dies, the ghost's soul or the ghost itself will hop onto the nearest ghost in the room, which can then be attacked. So simply follow the ghosts along, kill the ghosts in order. You can right click and mark them if you're in a group as well, to make it easier for your teammates to understand which ghost is attackable. Next up we have the sliding statues, which is a very common puzzle found throughout Dungeoneering, and this one is really simple. All you have to do is mirror the statues to the north with the southern statues. So simply pull and push them until they're in the exact same position as the statues to the north. You'll know you have completed the puzzle if there's a message in your chat box saying the doors have been unlocked. Next up we have sliding tiles, and this is a fairly basic puzzle. After you've done it once, you can move a tile every single tick, so you can do it faster than I did in the video. I did it slow just to show you how to do it, and basically what you do is you make this exact same shape every single time. Next up we have 2 DPS puzzles, the first of which being the Mercenary Leader. This is simply a Guardian Room, so it's not really a puzzle, but kill the leader first, then kill his minions, and then open the door. That's all you need to know. Then next up we have Remoki Familiars. Basically kill all the Remoki little NPCs around the room and the door should open. Pretty simple as well. Next up is Suspicious Grooves, and it doesn't really require an explanation, but all I am going to tell you is don't right click investigate as I did just here in the example, because that takes way too long. You could just go through the puzzle. As long as you have some food, you should be fine. What you can also do if you have Persistent Rage is barricade to negate the damage, although this is a large waste of adrenaline, but it is a way to negate the damage. And as soon as someone has made it to the other side, what you can do is Gatestone it so other people can just teleport over and you don't have to find the path again. It's a really basic puzzle, but it can suck if you get really unlucky and you can die. Next up we have 5 puzzles that are pretty much the same thing, except they have one little thing that's different, or they're faster than the other. The Statue Bridge and Keystone Bridge are very simple. You mine a rock and you repair the gap in the bridge, or you repair the statue and push the statue on a pressure pad to create the bridge. The broken plank bridge allows you to jump over it, but sometimes a party member can't, so the other must repair the bridge with 5 planks or place a gatestone on the other side for you to teleport to, being the group gatestone. Although generally if you're splitting up it doesn't really matter. Next up, the grapple tightrope and grapple winch. Simply grab a thing from both crates. If you're doing larges, you might want to make multiple just in case you get multiple of these puzzles. Repair the grapple head by smithing it. Spin the rope by spinning on the spinning wheel. Create the grapple by adding them together by left clicking them in your inventory. Throw it to the other side of the bridge by clicking on the other side. Then click on the line to walk over it, or click on the winch to operate it depending on which of the 2 puzzles you have. Also, in case you didn't notice in the clips, as you can see, Xanthus is using his mobility abilities like Bladed Dive and Search in the right way to almost beat me to it, creating the grappling hook. If you know how to use your mobility abilities, you can speed up this puzzle's process. First up, for intermediate puzzles, we have the 3 statue weapon. Simply create the weapon the statue isn't holding. For example, in this scenario, the statue has a position where it's holding a bow, but there's no bow. Mine the wall, carve the rock into the weapon that's required, and give it to the statue. Next up is a version of the puzzle that is similar, except it can scale up with the amount of people in the party. If it's only 2 people, there'll probably only be 2 or 3 of these statues. In this puzzle, you would give each and every statue that isn't holding a weapon that would counter the weapon the statue is using in front of it. So, if a statue is standing in front of another statue with ranged, you would give the statue with no weapon a melee weapon. If the statue is using magic, you would give the statue a ranged weapon. Next up is the unhappy ghost puzzle. All you have to do is pick up the ring from the floor, put it into the jewelry box, and then fix everything around the area, being the pillar and broken pots in the room. Then all you have to do is unlock the coffin in the middle by clicking on it, and then clicking on it again to bless the coffin, and the door should be opened. The ghost will do a little dance and you're good to go. Return the Flow is a relatively simple puzzle. Simply fix the pillars and mine away any rock/debris that is blocking the path of the flow, and you're done and the door should be unlocked. The monolith puzzle is another combat puzzle, and it isn't really hard. All you have to do is wait until the monolith is fully charged up, but once it's charging up, ghosts will spawn, and when they do hit the monolith, it will put down the charge if they hit multiple times. So simply kill the ghosts as quickly as you can, make sure they don't hit the monolith, and once it's charged up, the room will open. Next up is the magical construct. This is relatively simple. Simply look at what the magical golem is missing. In this case, it's an arm. You grab a rock from the little box or chest next to him. You carve it into what he needs by right clicking it and choosing carve. And then you imbue it by clicking in your inventory, left clicking it, and then you click on the golem a few times. You can spam click to make it speed up. And he smashes through the walls and basically opens up the doors for you. It does take some time. It's time gated, but it's a fairly easy puzzle. Next up is the portal maze. Now this puzzle is all about trial and error. You have to find your way to the middle, and this should only take 3 doors. Now once someone in your team finds the correct door order, they should communicate it towards their team so that everyone can quickly gather in the middle to stand on the pads to unlock the door. An easy way to get everyone out quickly to use the correct path after it has been found is by placing the group gatestone outside of the puzzle. Lodestone power is another puzzle, but before you start this puzzle you must pick up the power crystal. Then simply take the middle path, and then once the sphere spawns, simply move away from the sphere, so either left or right and then north to get to the end. It's really simple once you've done it once, trust me. Just pick up the power crystal, go through the middle, then go left or right and then north. Then simply power up the lodestone and the door will be opened. Here's another perspective with a bird's eye view on how to complete the puzzle. As you can see, the sphere moves to the left, so all you have to do is move to the right because you can't move to the left. As you can see, Xanthus moves to the right, the sphere moves a little bit, then he goes north, and north again, and he finishes the puzzle. Next up is levers, and if you're solo, it's really easy. Simply pull all the levers, and you can speed it up by using Bladed Dive and Search to get to the other side. Now if you're in a group, you have to pull the levers at the exact same time, but one player can actually do 2 levers by using Bladed Dive, so it can be done with less people. It's a lot harder in groups because if someone mistimes it or uses the lever too late, you can mess up the puzzle room. Flip tiles is a puzzle where you turn everything into one color. You do this by left click and flipping them in a plus shape. You do this until around 2 to 3 are left, and then the final puzzle pieces are simply right click force to change color without flipping the other ones. You can do this straight from the get-go if you really want to, but it's a lot faster to left click flip them until a few are left. Next up we have emotes or follow the leader, and this isn't a hard puzzle whatsoever, but it's annoying and it's definitely one you want to skip in large 5-man group dungeons, because with 5 people the chance of messing up is definitely there. If you mess it up, all of your progress is destroyed, even if it was the 3rd emote. A tip I can give you: nodding ahead is up and down and shaking ahead is left to right. This is the one that most people mess up, at least from what I've seen. For the Ferret Scout puzzle, simply click all 3 of the crates and that's about it. Please ignore me mining that Promethean ore, by the way, that was a misclick. So yeah, just click all 3 of the crates, the fish, the wood, and you're done. Colored Recess is a fairly simple puzzle. All you have to do is push or pull these little blocks on the corners, so purple, blue, yellow, and green, and then add the potions to these rocks. Now if you're in duo, one person could grab the potions by holding down the buttons on the keyboard and spam clicking the wall, pressing 1, 2, 3, and 4. This will quickly give you the potions in your inventory, and then of course, use the green potion on green, yellow on yellow, blue on blue, and so on. Fairly simple. The agility puzzle is fairly straightforward, but you can surge past the spinning blades, or alternatively walk carefully to avoid taking damage. In this particular example I fail on purpose, and you see me taking hits. Not the biggest of deals, you can just keep on walking, and it doesn't really hurt you that much. Next up is the collapsing room, and you basically just mine and go through it. Unless this isn't a dead end or something, you might want to repair the collapsed walls on the side, because if you don't and you have to go back through it, you have to mine through it again. If you don't repair the wall, the rocks will fall back a few seconds later. So yeah, if you want to, avoid having to go through this path again, simply repair the walls on the side, go through and unlock the door. For the barrel puzzle, make your way to the other side of the room to grab the broken barrel bits. Just push around the barrels, grab it, and then repair the broken barrel on the other side of the room. Once you've done this, you need to charge up the barrel or get the bar to full to unlock the door. You do this by keeping the barrel on the lit up slit. You can see the bar charging up in the top part of the screen. And I know I was messing up a lot in this particular clip, and I was just puzzle hunting with Xanthus here, so that's also why the dungeon time is so slow. But yeah, that's how you complete the puzzle. Once you've done it once, it will make so much sense, and you'll do it so much quicker the second time. As for the poltergeist puzzle, simply spam until you get the right herb that doesn't deal damage to you and gives you XP, clean the herbs, add them to the sensors or little candle lighter things, light them up. Do not kill monsters like the other guy in the clip is doing, just help your teammates clear this puzzle, and after you've lit all of them, open the sarcophagus and you should have finished the puzzle. The other way of doing it is examining the sarcophagus to get a clue to which of the herbs is the right one, and then grabbing it, cleaning it, doing the same thing, and you should be able to finish the puzzle that way too. Next up is the fishing ferret puzzle. Now this puzzle isn't per se hard, but I consider it to be part of the hard puzzles because it requires more brain power. You'll have to lure the ferret to a pressure pad to unlock the door. You do this by fishing at least 3 fish, cooking them and throwing them onto the path to get him there. However, he cannot go into any of the green holes, otherwise he will teleport around. Now, you can do all of the puzzles with just 3 fish. However, if it's your first time, I recommend grabbing more fish because you might mess up. Here's a nice overview of all fishing ferret possibilities by It's Goldie. Here's me doing the puzzle in action. I fish my fish. I did grab a little too many in this particular clip, by the way. I cook them on the fire. While I'm cooking them on the fire, I look at the ferret and try to think of the path. It's really simple because it can walk diagonally. I throw 1 fish, then the second. Wait for him to walk and stand still, by the way. And then throw your next fish onto the pad. Boom, done, door unlocked. Next up is the Toxin maze, and apparently there's only 5 possibilities. The images you're seeing on screen are made by Icy in case you want an example of how to do the path quickly, but in the end, you're going to have to figure out the path yourself, and there is a timer. But if there isn't a key in the middle, you don't need to get to the middle, you can simply skip the maze by going to the door. If there is a key, and it's a critical key, you will want to go to the middle of the maze. In that case, you have to pull the lever and then go through the doors and figure out the path as you go, or use an image if you can connect it to an image made by Icy. Now I'm going to show you a clip of me doing the Toxin maze the first time in like 5 years. And as you can see, once the timer ends, Toxin starts damaging you. But to end the toxin, you simply click on the chest in the middle and then you're done. Now, as you can see, even with no experience for pretty much years, you can still do the toxin maze quite easily without dying. That is, if you're at full HP. Now, a tip I can give you is put a gatestone at the door, so once you finish the toxin maze, you can simply teleport to it to save some time. Next up is the sleeping guards puzzle, which is only found on furnished floors. Turn off your run, pickpocket the guards for the key, open the door, and you're done. It's really that simple. Now, there is a way of doing this with surge and running back and forth without actually waking the guards that is faster, but I simply can't recommend it because you're going to mess it up too much and then you have to kill the guards and stuff, and it's just nah. Just walk, pickpocket the guards until you have the key, go for the door, and done. Next up is the Pond Skaters puzzle, and this one isn't per se hard, but it can be if you're not paying attention. Now, these pond skaters go to the middle and then one of them opens up their mouth to showcase which one has the key. Now, I've heard it's almost always the west one if you put your compass to the north when you first go into the room. Then once it comes to the side of the little pond, be sure to spam click it to get the key, and then you can open the door. You can see if you did it correctly by checking your chat box, by the way. Next up is the Seeker Sentinel, only found on abandoned floors, and this one is not per se straightforward. You have to keep an eye on the eye in the middle. Now, this one cannot be looking at you. As soon as it starts rotating around, you can start doing the puzzle. Now, it's not very hard. Just pay attention to when the little cute things move away from you, so their back is towards you. Knock them out. You can actually take a break in between the parts by using the wall, and make it to the other side, unlock the door, and you're done. Next up is the Hunter Ferret, and this one can be very, very, very frustrating if you mess it up. If you completely mess it up, you can place traps by cutting down the trees inside the little room and placing traps in the corners, as you can see in this little clip. Otherwise, if you have Bladed Diver's Surge, you can catch him by doing this method. Align yourself with the Hunter Ferret by slowly walking towards it. Then once you're aligned with the ferret, you want to Bladed Dive to the exact position in front of him and then quickly left click and catch him. But there's a chance you'll miss or he'll bite you in your hand, so you have to reattempt it. Just simply move back to the door, wait till he stands still, calms down, and then attempt it again. Here's a successful catch. As you can see, that's it done, and I can open the door. It does require some practice though for sure, and I definitely didn't do it my first try. An easier way of doing it, if you don't have Bladed Dive, instead of putting those traps around the room and running around like an idiot, is simply by walking close to the ferret, stay at least 2 tiles away, and then quickly running around the corner and catching it with your bare hands. The next puzzle is simply a riddle. The Enigmatic hoardstalker will give you a sort of riddle, which you can see on screen now, and then you'll have to retrieve an item for him by looking in chests, barrels, or picking it up from the floor. Once you give the item to him, the door will be unlocked. Now, once you learn all of these riddles off the top of your head, this will be a lot faster, but instead you can just keep an image open on your PC and use it on the side. Okay, this next puzzle might be the most frustrating puzzle, apart from one more that will come in just a second. Colored ferrets. All I can tell you right now, if you're learning this puzzle, take some time. Have patience. The way it works is if you get close to a ferret, it will walk 2 tiles away from you. The ferrets can walk diagonally, and once they're on the pressure pad, they will be locked in place. If they're stuck in the corner, you have to scare them away to get them to a decent position. This puzzle is all about practice, trial and error, and even if you mess up, it doesn't really matter. Don't worry too much about it. Simply keep going, reset if you need to by scaring it around, and then push it into its pad slowly but surely. In this particular clip, as you can see, all I have to do to put the yellow one on its pad is lure it or push it diagonally. Slowly but surely is the way to go when you're first doing this puzzle. Now, the red one is at the side of the room, so I have to scare it away completely before I can start luring it in the pad. Now, when you scare a ferret, it will go into a random direction, and in my case, I was very lucky and it went straight onto the pad. Easy clap. Now, the flower puzzle is easy to do but hard to do quickly with Bladed Dive and Surge. This particular example is a good way of doing it quickly, but you need to time it right. Now, you can only cut the roots of the same color of the big flower and the small flower. So if the big flower is purple, you can only cut the purple flowers. If the flower is reddish, you cannot cut the purple flower. And the small flowers also change colors in the same order: red, yellow, blue, purple. If you can anticipate the colors changing, you can also anticipate which smaller color is going to change in the right color next. Then, once you get to the big flower, you chop it down to unlock the door. When you first open the door, you want to look for a yellow small flower that's about to change blue. Simply because when you first open the door, it will always be blue on the big flower. You can then quickly go for the puzzle once you open it straight away. However, there's definitely room for error, and if you aren't quick enough, you won't be able to do it in one go, which happened with me in this particular clip. I could have gone for the blue one if I was quick enough, but I wasn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Unless you're going for speed dungeons, then it definitely matters because it's going to slow you down. Next up is the crystal puzzle, which is all about turning these lights into sync. I'm going to show you a bird's eye view of how to solve this puzzle done by Xanthus. Now, as you can see, there's this green light hopping around to the middle. Now, all you have to do is do this with all 4 lights, or if there's less lights, and sync them up to open up the door. Now, I'm going to play this clip in slow motion for you to understand. Once the lights hit the middle, he clicks on the lodestone to activate the 3rd light, in this case, the red one. This is how you sync them up, but if you do mess up, don't worry, as you can still correct it by using the pressure pads. The reason you want to click on the lodestone once it hits the middle is because it will spawn on the 2nd tile. Have a look at this image on screen to have a better understanding of how this puzzle works. Once you click on the lodestone, the color will start beeping on the tiles from the 2nd tile. I hope this image helps you guys solve the puzzle, but the thing is, it comes down to timing. If you mess up the timing by turning it on when it just hits the middle, you can still fix it by standing on the pressure pad, which basically pauses the beeping. Here's a good example of that happening and him syncing up all of the beeps, and once it is done, the door will be unlocked. In the colored books puzzle, you have 4 different colored books. The way you complete this puzzle is by directing each colored book to the correct bookcase on the wall. These books fly in and out of the bookcases, as you can see in this example. Once you turn them sideways once, the books will stop flying in a sort of paused position. Eventually, all 4 books must face the correct color on the wall. Now, with the colored bookcases, unless you want to make your life very hard, you want to start with the books on the edges. In the video example, that is red and blue. Then you can make your way inwards slowly but surely, because otherwise, if you don't do that, you're going to have to swap the middle one again, and it's just going to be chaos. Let me explain what I mean by showing you an image on screen. This is a completely made up scenario, by the way, but as you can see, there are the bookcases and there are the books. The blue and red are flying towards each other, the green and yellow are flying towards each other, and underneath you can see the path you'll need to take to bring them to the right bookcase. Now, this is probably something you can figure out by yourself, but the thing you need to know again is to start with the edges. So in this case, get green to one side and get red to the other side, and then start figuring out yellow and blue. This is going to save you a lot of time. Alternatively, if you have the outfit or lock melter, just skip this puzzle because it's a pain in the ass to do. Finally, I want to mention 2 different training methods that might be relevant to you if you're interested in doing them. First of them is a daily D&D you can do twice, which is called Sinkholes. Now, Sinkholes can give you tokens and Dungeoneering XP, and the Sinkhole world is world 134. If you're interested in more information about sinkholes, please check out my full guide linked in the description below. Then another option is elite dungeon token farming. Now, elite dungeon token farming can vary in the amount of tokens you get per hour, anywhere from 80 to 200k tokens an hour, depending on how good your trio is, and if you're doing it solo or not, and how good your gear is, and so on. Again, if you're interested in this, I will leave a full guide linked in the description below. And other than that, that is pretty much the end of this extremely long guide. If this guide helps you by any means, all I ask of you is to leave a like down below, as I've put an incredible amount of time into this guide. It's probably my single longest guide I've ever created. Before ending off the video though, I'd also like to give a massive shout out to Xanthus, aka Xanthus, for helping me with a huge amount of things in this video. As without him, this video would not have been possible, and perhaps it would have never been made in such detail, because he's the one that actually motivated me to create a new and actually good Dungeoneering guide. With that being said, thank you for watching. Peace.